now move to question time, and I'll call Senator Hume. Senators, I've indicated to the chamber we've moved to question time, and I have called you, Senator Hume.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Was the Treasurer briefed by Treasury on the policy views of Danielle Wood prior to her appointment as Chair of the Productivity Commission, and if so, on what date?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I really welcome the opportunity to congratulate Danielle Wood as the first female leader of the Productivity Commission when she takes up that role. I would have to come back to Senator Hume if there's anything further that I can add, but I understand that there was a full merit selection process which was undertaken for that appointment, and the Treasurer would have been briefed on that. But it is an exciting opportunity to have Ms Wood take up that role. It's an important institution. It's an institution that the Treasurer is keen to invest in, so that we can continue to get good advice from that body, particularly with the productivity challenges that have been apparent in this economy for more than a decade now, and some of the work that needs to be done to make sure that we are lifting productivity and enhancing living standards. So a full merit process, the Treasurer would have been briefed on that. She's a fine candidate who brings a wealth of experience and expertise, including a stint at the Productivity Commission previously in an earlier time in her career. I look forward to working with Ms Wood, as does all members of the government, and I indeed hope that people in the—
Minister Gallagher. Senator Hume, point of order.
Point of order, President, on direct relevance. The question was about whether the Treasurer had been briefed by Treasury on the policy views of Ms Wood prior to her appointment, not the merit selection process.
I believe the Minister is being relevant. She said she would take that part of the question on notice, but I'll leave that to the Minister.
I would come back if there was anything further I could advise,
yeah.
But I did indicate that there was a full merit process where candidates were interviewed. Now, normally, as part of that process, people would have, an interview panel would have gone to an applicant's career in this area, people who've produced publications, been involved in policy debates. I have no doubt that through a merit process all of those matters would have been raised. She's a standout candidate, an excellent candidate. She will be a first-rate leader of the Productivity Commission, and the government looks forward to working with her.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Has the Treasurer ever had a conversation with Ms Wood about tax in Australia, and if so, on what date? And did the discussion include inheritance taxes?
Minister. Order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I can't stand here and answer every conversation or have insight into every conversation that the Treasurer has had with anyone, for that matter, including Ms Wood. But she will be, and I would hope that her appointment to this senior position in the economic portfolio would be welcomed by those opposite. She is a serious candidate with a serious CV, an incredible level of achievement in the roles that she has held, and I would have hoped that this chamber would have seen the opportunity to congratulate her in this role. And the government doesn't form the view that we have to agree with every position that individuals may hold. Now, if Ms Wood has positions that she holds that may differ from the government,
Gallagher,
that is entirely reasonable.
Senator Hume.
Thank you, President. If Minister Gallagher, yes, sorry, point of order, which is direct relevance. If the Minister doesn't know the answer, I would very much appreciate it if she would go away and come back to the chamber with an answer. She can take that on notice. She can take it. She did say she didn't have an answer.
Senator
she can
Hume,
take it on notice.
That is not a point of order. the Minister did answer your question. It's not a point of order, it's a debating point. Thank you. Minister, did you have anything to add?
Thank you. And I did answer it straight up. Senator Hume didn't like the answer, but I can't
Thank
answer
you,
for
Minister.
every
The time for
conversation the
answering
Treasurer has had.
expired. Senator Hume's second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Has the Treasurer issued a direction to the Productivity Commission to cease any work on an inheritance tax?
Minister Gallagher.
Honestly.
Senator Sterle, that was inappropriate.
Is this really the best you can do midway through a sitting week? Honestly. We have an incredible candidate who's been appointed to a senior job in the economic portfolio, the first time a woman has held it, and this is the level of the question that we get from the opposition. This is the level that we get from the opposition. Well, I would say we intend to take note of the Productivity Commission's reports, unlike those opposite, where productivity, the decade you were in power, was the worst productivity outcomes in 60 years. Get that? 60 years. That's what you did. And part of the problem was every time the Productivity Commission released a report, you ignored it. It sat on the shelf. You didn't even bother responding to it. We look forward to working with Ms Wood. We look forward to her leadership and the skills that she will bring to the economic debates in this country.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Hume.
Point of order, Madam President. On direct relevance, it was a very simple question as to whether the Treasurer has directed the Productivity Commission to rule out an inheritance tax. We did not get an answer.
I'll invite the Minister in the 3 seconds remaining if she has anything further to add. Thank you. Senator White.
Inheritance tax. My question is to the Minister. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Can the Minister update the Senate on how the Albanese government, Labor government is delivering on its promise to build more homes for Australians through the $10 billion Housing Australian Future Fund? Can you please confirm the fund will create a secure, ongoing pipeline of funding for social and affordable rental housing?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Wong.
I thank Senator White for her question, and I thank her not only for her continued support for more housing in Australia for Australians who need it, but for her advocacy for social justice and equity for all of her working life, including in this Senate. And we do have an ambitious housing reform agenda, and we welcome the new support for the Housing Australia Future Fund, and we look forward to the Senate dealing with the legislation expeditiously. This fund, the $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund, will ensure there is consistent and ongoing funding for social and affordable rental housing. Returns from the fund will help deliver our commitment to 30,000 new social and affordable rental homes in the fund's first 5 years. And it will deliver the Albanese government's commitments to help address acute housing needs, including $200 million for the repair, maintenance and improvement of housing in remote Indigenous communities. It will provide $100 million for crisis and transitional housing options for women and children impacted by family violence and older women who we know are increasingly at risk of homelessness. And there will be funding to build housing for veterans who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And we have announced additional funds of $1 billion to be invested in the National Housing Infrastructure Facility to support new homes. So despite persistent, ongoing and unconscionable opposition from those who presided over the housing crisis we are now tackling, the Liberals and Nationals, who sowed the seeds of a housing crisis in their wasted decade in government, who neglected those most in need, those on this side of the chamber are working to deliver more homes for Australians. More homes for Australians, something that you consistently oppose.
Thank you, Minister. Senator White, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for the update. What other measures is the Albanese government taking to ensure more Australians, including renters, have a safe and affordable place to call home?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, we know that renters are doing it tough, and I want to emphasise that the 30,000 homes in the first 5 years of the Housing Australia Future Fund are rental homes, social and affordable rental homes, and we are providing additional funding on top of the Housing Australia Future Fund for social and affordable rental homes. We have worked with the state and territories on a national housing accord to build 1.2 million homes over the next 5 years. These are important measures that will put downward pressure on rental prices by increasing supply. We're also working with states and territories to secure a better deal for renters to improve renters' rights across the country. And this government is delivering the largest increase in Commonwealth rent assistance in more than 30 years. Yeah. More than 30 years, as well as working to get more Australians into home ownership with the expanded home guarantee scheme.
Senator White, second supplementary.
Australia's peak housing and homelessness bodies have been steadfast in their support of the Albanese Labor government's housing reforms. Can the minister explain why the sector wants all parliamentarians to pass the Housing Australia Future Fund?
Minister.
Well, it is true that organisations working at the coalface of family violence—
Beg your pardon, Minister Wong. Senator Ruston.
I'm seeking advice to you as to whether this question is in order.
Because?
Because questions shall not be specifically going to the specifics of a matter that is currently before the chamber.
Senator Wong.
The supplementary question went to the attitudes of peak housing and homelessness bodies. I do understand why Senator Ruston is embarrassed about discussing this. I do understand why she finds it hard to defend their opposition to more homes. I understand why they're all on their feet now, wanting to make sure they don't talk about homes.
Please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie, I have Senator Ruston on her feet, but I do accept that you were on your feet first.
Just a point of order. The minister was debating rather than actually addressing.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Senator Watt, order. Senator Ruston.
Seeking to understand whether you were actually going to rule on my request.
I will, and I always give leaders an opportunity to respond. Order across the chamber. Order across the chamber. Senator Ruston, I am advised it needs to be far more directly related to the legislation or the bill on foot, which that question is not. It's more of a broad interpretation. Senator Ruston.
Could I ask, President, that you would actually seek to review the question that has been asked of the minister and reflect on your ruling, because I would draw to your attention that the question was very specific in its direction to the legislation currently before the chamber.
Thank you, Senator Ruston. As I indicated to the chamber, I sought the advice of the clerk, and so I have reiterated to the chamber the advice of the clerk. But if it assists the chamber, I am always happy to review the question. So we will continue the question. Minister Wong.
Thank you. I do understand why those opposite are embarrassed about their position on housing, which is what the manager's intervention demonstrated, that they are so embarrassed about their position that they won't even allow, they don't even want a government dicta on it. I mean, that is a new level of sensitivity from the opposition, and that is because your position is an unarguable position. It is an illogical position. Just ask Homelessness Australia's Kate Colvins, who said the homes delivered through the HAF will make an enormous difference to people who would otherwise be homeless. Community Housing Industry Associations, Wendy Hayhurst, who has spoken out in support of this. The Master Builders Association have spoken out in support of this. The Urban Development Institute spoken out in support of this. You are on your own in your relentless negativity and in your opposition to new housing.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Order. Order across the chamber. That was very disorderly. Interjections across the chamber are particularly disorderly. Senator Dean Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, you told the Senate last week that the Albanese government was pleased with the national accounts data released on Wednesday of last week. Will you explain how the government can be pleased that Australia is experiencing a per capita recession?
Minister Gallagher.
We were pleased with the result, and as I said at the time, I think that the results were better than many commentators had expected. Stronger.
Minister, please resume a seat. Senator Scarr, I have called you on numerous occasions. I am asking you to listen in respectful silence. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. That the economy is growing, and it's growing faster than many of the countries that we often compare ourselves with. So overall, that is good news. Now, we have never ever pretended that there aren't challenges facing the economy. There are. From day one, since I started answering questions in this place, from the beginning of this government, we inherited an economy with rising inflation, high inflation, rising interest rates, and we had to deal with that. We also had the effects of the borders opening after COVID and the return of international students in faster numbers, I think, than most expected. And this has set a challenge for the economy, but we are dealing with it. And the fact that the economy is growing is good news that I would have thought everyone in this place would share. That is, I would have thought it is something that those opposite would also accept was a good result. In light of the challenges facing the economy, some of them domestic, some of them related to the global situation, that is something that all of us in this place would think is a reasonable result. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't challenges, because there are, and we should have our eyes open on those. We're seeing inflation moderate. That is a good outcome. That is a good result. We're seeing wages starting to get moving. Again, that is a good result. We've got the opportunity that will come with the transition to a cleaner and greener economy. But there's no doubt there's challenges. But those national accounts last week spoke to the strength of our economy and its performance overall.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Again, noting the Albanese government's positive view of the national accounts, can you confirm that the household savings ratio is the lowest level since July 2008? And can you tell the Senate what is pleasing about the household saving ratio declining to the lowest level since Labor was last in power 15 years ago?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I think you're selectively interpreting my comments. I have said we were pleased with the results, but there were challenges, and there are challenges going forward. So don't stand up here and pretend that I have said something otherwise. In terms of household savings, and they are reducing, and that shows the impact of rising or higher interest rates than we've had for some time. People are dipping into their savings. We've acknowledged that, which is why our cost of living package, which I would remind those opposite who are very quiet, have opposed every step along the way, whether it be cheaper medicines, cheaper energy, whether it's investment in housing, every which way that we have gone, you have opposed those cost of living measures. And they're to make sure that households can deal with the higher inflation environment and the impact that higher interest rates have had on household budgets. So it is not surprising that we're seeing a dip in household savings based on the economic circumstances right now.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Dean Smith, second supplementary.
Thank you. The national accounts confirmed that Australia experienced its largest fall in terms of trade since the June quarter of 2009, and that households across the country have been forced to cut discretionary spending and pay more for essential goods as a result of inflation and interest rate rises under the Albanese government's watch. Minister, what can be pleasing about any of this?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Well, those comments were relating to the fact that the economy is growing overall. And again, I would say that, and those opposite know this, they know it because they left the government or they handed government over in this state, that the highest quarter of inflation happened under your watch. That's what happened. Well, let's just not pretend. Let's not just pretend, because the way the question was placed was that this happened under Labor. So the highest inflation started under your government. The interest rate increases started under your government. The interest rate increases to deal with the high inflation started under you. That is the truth. Okay? And we are dealing with it, just like we're dealing with every other area of government that you left in disarray. Through your disinterest and your disunity, you neglected your role as the government in charge, and we are fixing up every single area of government we inherited.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Rice.
Thanks, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment, Senator Wong. Last Thursday, on Threatened Species Day, the Minister for the Environment issued a media release stating the government has today released a new recovery plan to boost the long-term survival of the critically endangered swift parrot. However, as reported by The Guardian, the swift parrot recovery plan announced on Threatened Species Day was not actually finalised, had not been shared with the experts who helped to develop it, that the last official draft they had received was a version released for public comment in 2019, and that once they had seen it, the scientists said the plan released on Thursday contained no meaningful action to address the key threat to the survival of the species, the logging of native forests. Minister, how much longer is the federal government going to allow the native forest logging industry to recklessly destroy swift parrot habitat and drive them to extinction?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, and I thank the senator for her question. And the advice I have in relation to the swift parrot recovery plan perhaps differs from what she just read out. The advice I have is the plan has been endorsed by the federal government's independent Threatened Species Scientific Committee, which includes many of Australia's most experienced and respected scientists. But I think the real nub of the question from the senator is that
Senator McKim. Senator McKim, I'm calling you to order. The minister is answering. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you. But I have listened to what the senator put to me, and if there's anything further, notwithstanding the information that Senator McKim appears to be wanting to share with us, I will provide that. But I think the real nub of the question that the senator is asking is actually at the end, which is, I know. The Greens political party have a position in relation to native forest.
Senator Rice, it's not a commentary. You've asked your question and the minister is answering.
No, they
Minister,
have a position. A position on native forest logging. I would say to them that I think we all understand, and the Albanese government understands, that native forests are valuable for their carbon storage and native habitats, including for endangered animals like swift parrots. That is why the government has already announced that for the first time in Australia, the regional forest agreements will have to comply with new environment laws. So I understand the position that is being put to me is essentially a position, a hardline position, hardline meaning drawing a line. Wasn't trying to make a political comment in relation to native forests. Obviously, the government has to balance the regional forest agreement imperatives as well as the environmental imperatives that the senator references.
Senator Rice, first supplementary.
So, Minister, can I clarify, are you claiming that the recovery plan has actually been finalised? Because reporting and the department have told us that it is actually still being finalised and that the Victorian and the New South Wales governments are yet to sign on. So has it been finalised, or when will we be actually able to see a final swift parrot recovery plan? And how many swift parrots are going to die because of logging before the plan is finalised?
Thank you, Senator Rice. Minister Watt.
Well, in relation to the first part, I provided you with the brief that I have, Senator Rice, but as I said to you at the outset, you put a range of facts or assertions to me in your opening question, which I don't have any further advice on. And if there's anything I can usefully add to that, I will come back to the chamber and do so. I will check with the minister. But in relation to native forests, I again say I think the nub of the question from you is there is a difference of views in relation to the native forestry sector. And the government recognises the immense value of our native forests, including as habitat for endangered animals and species such as the swift parrot. However, we do support a sustainable native forest sector. We were clear about that before the last election. We want to make sure it operates under high standards for environment management and sustainable harvesting.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Rice, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, since the commencement of the regional forest agreements, we've witnessed more than a quarter of forest-dependent species that are listed by the federal government as threatened and endangered move closer to extinction. How does the federal government expect to reach zero extinctions when native forest logging is killing endangered species, including swift parrots, greater gliders, one was found dead in a logging coop just recently, and koalas, and obliterating their habitat?
Thank you, Senator Rice. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. As I think identified in my response to the primary that the nub of the question was, which is essentially a difference of views on native forests. We continue to support sustainable forestry. We recognise that a sustainable native forestry sector that operates under high standards for environmental management and sustainable harvesting has benefits in terms of jobs and the economy. And frankly, as someone from...
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Rice.
Point of order, President. My question was how does the government expect to reach zero extinctions, not extolling the benefits of native forest logging?
Thank you, Senator Rice, and you also went to species and you also mentioned the RFA. Minister Wong, I think, is being relevant. Please continue.
Senator, your position is stop native forest logging. That's your position. No, and that I respect it. I disagree with it, but I respect it. So if I'm responding by saying that isn't the government's position, that is entirely relevant. That is entirely relevant. And one of the things I have never understood, given where I come from, is why it has been the position of the Greens political party that it's all right to have logging offshore in countries with lower levels of regulation than it is to have in Australia. And I can say that
thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired.
I can say
that. Minister Wong, please resume your seat. The time has expired. Senator Bilyk.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Housing and Homelessness, Senator Farrell. I keep hearing from constituents and stakeholders across Tasmania about the urgent need for more affordable housing. Knowing that the Labor government has a clear and ambitious housing reform agenda that will deliver housing for Australians who are in urgent need of safe and affordable places to live, how does the Albanese government's housing reform agenda demonstrate a shift from the inaction we have seen on housing over the previous decade?
Thank you, Senator Bilyk. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and can I thank Senator Bilyk for her great interest in this area that's so important to her home state of Tasmania. Sadly, under the former Liberal and National government, there was nearly a decade of inaction on housing policy, a lack of action that left too many Australians struggling to put a roof over their heads. That's why Australians are welcoming a new approach to housing policy, an approach which has seen the Albanese government hit the ground running, delivering an ambitious housing reform agenda. The shift in approach in housing policy is stark. Those opposite didn't hold a single meeting about housing with the states in their entire last term. Shame. The current Minister for Housing is showing national leadership through regular Housing Ministerial Council meetings, which have met multiple times this year. The former government also showed no interest in social and affordable housing. In contrast, the Housing Australia Future Fund will see the Albanese government deliver 30,000 new social and affordable homes in the fund's first 5 years, including a minimum of at least 1,200 in the Senator's home state of Tasmania. The former government had no plan for housing and failed to deliver housing for Australians in need. The Albanese government has a comprehensive housing agenda that is delivering social and affordable housing for Australians. It's an agenda that's delivering for all Australians, but particularly Tasmanians in your home state, Senator Bilyk.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bilyk, first supplementary.
Thanks for that, Minister. I, like all my colleagues on this side, are very pleased to hear that the Albanese government are delivering homes for Australians who need them. I'm particularly interested in the announcements yesterday about further progress on the delivery of the Albanese government's Housing Australia Future Fund. Given this update, can you, Minister, outline what obstacles remain for the establishment of the fund?
Thank you, Senator Bilyk. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Bilyk, for her first supplementary question. And yes, I can answer that question. Housing Australia Future Fund will be life-changing. An ongoing pipeline of funding for new social and affordable rental homes, not just for now, but for generations to come. It's urgently needed, and we look forward to its passage. It's needed because far too many Australians are being hit by growing rents or struggling to buy a home. And far too many Australians are facing or experiencing homelessness. We are in a situation because of a decade of inaction from those opposite. And again, the Liberals and the Nationals are opposing real action through the Housing Australia Future Fund, saying no and doing nothing for Australians who need safe and affordable homes. That's what we've come to expect from them, but Australians know that they can expect more from the Albanese...
Senator Bilyk, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, I've seen the media feedback from stakeholders warmly welcoming the progress of the Housing Australia Future Fund and the government's housing agenda, including strong support from the building and construction sector. Can you provide an update to the Senate on how the government's housing reform agenda will work with vital sectors for the delivery of these new homes?
Thank you, Senator Bilyk. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And yes, I can, Senator Bilyk. And thank you for that question, because the Albanese government wants every Australian to have a secure as having a roof over their heads. That's why we're working with sectors who are at the front line of delivering the homes our country needs. We've heard from the community sector about the difference the Housing Australia Future Fund will make. We are working with the construction industry to ensure our policies are considered and targeted at addressing the real issues confronting the housing system. Our policies are delivering in collaboration with community housing providers, construction companies and local councils. We look forward to the passage of the Housing Australia Future Fund as part of our broad reform agenda and continuing to work hard to ensure more Australians have access to safe and affordable homes.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Attorney-General, Minister Watt. Currently, 2 whistleblowers are on trial for telling the truth about government wrongdoing. David McBride blew the whistle on war crimes in Afghanistan. Richard Boyle exposed unethical debt recovery practices at the ATO. In November, McBride will be the first person on trial in relation to war crimes in Afghanistan. The whistleblower, not a war criminal. Has the government sought advice on whether the AG should exercise his discretion under the Judiciary Act to discontinue these unjust prosecutions?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Pocock, for the question. I can certainly assure Senator Pocock and the whole chamber that the Attorney-General is strongly of the view that integrity and the rule of law are central to Australia's criminal justice arrangements. The Attorney-General's power to discontinue proceedings is reserved for very unusual and exceptional circumstances. Now, Senator Pocock has referred to 2 cases, Mr McBride and Mr Boyle. As their proceedings remain ongoing, it is obviously inappropriate to comment further on the particulars of their matters. However, I do note that the government is committed more broadly to delivering strong, effective and accessible protections for whistleblowers. The government has already delivered priority amendments to the Public Interest Disclosure Act and will commence a second, broader stage of reforms, which will include public consultation on broader reforms to the Public Interest Disclosure Act to provide effective and accessible protections to public sector whistleblowers and address the underlying complexity of the scheme, and also, as part of that consultation, the need for additional supports for public sector whistleblowers, such as a Whistleblower Protection Authority or Commissioner. The government is delivering on its commitment to ensure that Australia has effective frameworks to protect whistleblowers, which are critical to supporting integrity and the rule of law. Reforms to the Public Interest Disclosure Act are long overdue, and significant reform is required to restore the Act to a scheme that provides strong protection for public sector whistleblowers. So, Senator Pocock, as I say, I'm not really able to comment on the individual proceedings that you've mentioned, and we'll obviously wait to see how they play out in the courts. But as I say, we do very much believe in protection for whistleblowers, and already in our first 16 months we've begun work on some major reforms to strengthen those protections.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
President, thank you. Minister, on the principle of it, why does the government think that it's in the public interest to prosecute whistleblowers while at the same time running on a platform of integrity and admitting that our whistleblower protections are not up to scratch and saying you've got another tranche, but in the meantime we're going to prosecute whistleblowers?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. Thanks, Senator Pocock. Well, I think, as I say, we are getting a little bit close to commenting on particular proceedings that are on foot at the moment. And as I mentioned in my earlier answer, the Attorney-General's power to discontinue proceedings, as I think you're implying we should, is reserved for very unusual and exceptional circumstances. But you question our commitment to the protection of whistleblowers, and I've already outlined to you some of the actions that we've taken just in our first 16 months to, having delivered those amendments to the Public Interest Disclosure Act, and now beginning work on a second broader piece of work to strengthen reforms to protect whistleblowers further. So I think the fact that we have begun work through the Attorney-General on this matter so early in our first term does make clear that we understand that these are significant issues that do need reform. Unfortunately, they weren't reformed by the former government, but we're already taking action on that front so early in our term, and I think that demonstrates our commitment.
Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. Will the government commit to a time frame for the second phase of PID reform and the discussion paper or consultation on the establishment of a Whistleblower Protection Authority?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. What I can tell you is that the government has commenced work on the second broader stage of reforms to the public sector whistleblowing framework. As I say, that work involves public consultation on redrafting the Public Interest Disclosure Act to ensure it provides effective and accessible protections and to address the underlying complexity of the scheme, and secondly, the need for additional supports for public sector whistleblowers, such as a Whistleblower Protection Authority or Commissioner. It's been nearly 7 years since the Moss Review recommended reforms to the Public Interest Disclosure Act. Since then, as I've said, this government has delivered reforms to strengthen the Commonwealth's integrity framework, including by establishing the National Anti-Corruption Commission. When this second period of consultation is completed, we'll closely examine what further reforms may be required to ensure that we have an effective whistleblowing framework.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Babet.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Finance Minister, Minister Gallagher. Now, Minister, in recent weeks we've seen the public release of COVID-19 vaccine contracts in South Africa, including the Pfizer contract following a High Court ruling. Now, these contracts have revealed very liberal indemnity clauses, which we know from our own budget papers create an unquantifiable contingent liability. Now, Section 5.5 of the contract between Pfizer and the South African government state, and I'll just quote, "Purchaser further acknowledges that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccine are not currently known, and there may be adverse events of the vaccine that are also not currently known." Now, can the minister confirm if the Australian contracts have the same or similar words? Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Watt.
Babet, I would be obliged, President, if he could be clear whether or not Minister Gallagher is being asked as Finance Minister or as Minister representing the Minister for Health.
Senator Babet, if you'd like to clarify.
Presenting the Minister for Health, please.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And I think the final part of your question was about a clause in the contract and whether it... Right, okay. So those contracts are commercial in confidence, and I do note in the South African case that Senator Babet refers to, it was as a result of a High Court decision in South Africa, where a matter was taken to court by the Health Justice Initiative seeking access to those documents, that the government was not in a position prior to that case to release that information because of the nature with which those contracts were entered into. My advice is that those contracts are subject to commercial in confidence requirements, and so the government isn't in a position to release the contents of those contracts, but members will know. Well, these were contracts that were entered into under your government, Senator Canavan. So we weren't negotiating those contracts, but now that we are in government, we are bound by the requirements of those contracts. I would remind people that those contracts were signed at the beginning of a pandemic, where there was a lot of uncertainty about what was happening, and also the fact that there was a lot of people dying who were unvaccinated from the COVID virus. And so in procuring, I don't think Australia is any different to the arrangements that happened across the world, where governments entered into contracts with pharmaceutical companies to secure access to vaccines for their populations, to ensure their populations were vaccinated against a disease that was killing hundreds of thousands of people around the world. No, I'm not in a position to confirm that.
Senator Babet, first supplementary.
Minister, I accept when you say that things like the pricing arrangements might be commercial in confidence. That makes sense. However, surely what the government acknowledged around safety and efficacy is not commercial in confidence and must be released to the Australian public. Now, Minister, we do have individuals in this country who have been injured by these vaccines. Don't you think you and your government owe it to these people to come clean and release the Pfizer contracts, Minister?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And as I said, I'm not in a position to release the contracts that Senator Rennick, your government, entered into when it was in power. But there is, as senators will know, the COVID-19 vaccine claims scheme, which has been established.
Please resume your seat. Senator Rennick, I have called you to order. This is Senator Babet's question, and the minister is answering it. Minister, please continue. Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Rennick, when you're called to order, you come to order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. That the vaccine claims scheme, which has been established, was to ensure that people who did suffer a recognised adverse event as a direct result of the COVID-19 vaccine have faster access to compensation than a costly and complex court process. So I think that does acknowledge that there were a number of citizens that did have an adverse event and that there was a claim scheme put in place. Over $11 million has been paid to date under that vaccine claim scheme.
Senator Rennick.
Thank you, President. As senators will know, the scheme is demand-driven, meaning all eligible applicants will be paid regardless of how much.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Babet, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Now, Minister, your party has promised to be transparent, promised to be a transparent government. And you know what? You weren't even in government at the time that these contracts were signed. We all know that. You weren't the finance minister or the health minister. In fact, it could have been the member for Cook who signed these contracts. We don't know. We don't know. But the Australian public deserves to know. Now, Minister, at the very least, will you commit to releasing a redacted version of these contracts, a redacted version? Minister, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, while the member for Cook was the Treasurer, the Finance Minister, the Health Minister, I don't believe at the time. I don't believe that he would have signed these contracts, as that would have occurred at the public service level. Regardless, I mean, governments engage in contracts across the board. It's not just around vaccine arrangements, and where there are requirements that those contracts be kept confidential, I would say, regardless of a change of government, governments are bound by those contracts. So, I think you all come to estimates, you all ask questions around this matter. I'm sure that will continue. So there is a level of transparency and accountability that's provided that you take good advantage of, in my experience of sitting on that committee, and I would encourage you to continue to do so, but we won't be releasing the contracts.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. The Tasmanian Government has cut a new deal with the federal government on the Marinus Link, a new underwater electricity link between Tasmania and Victoria. The cost of the project has blown out to over $5 billion. When Minister Bowen announced that the Australian Government is now taking 50% of the equity in the proposed Marinus Link, he is reported to have said that, and I quote, all the expert analysis and evidence have seen all the expert analysis and evidence I've seen supports this project being built, end quote. Will the Minister commit to releasing all the expert analysis and evidence upon which he based his decision?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Lambie for her question, and I'll try and answer it in a couple of parts. The first, the general point about why it is needed, and I will certainly see if there's anything further that can be provided. But the general proposition is this, that we've seen after a decade of inaction and confused policy, we've seen dispatchable energy exit the market, and new reliable energy not enter the market. And if you look at what the Australian Energy Market Operator has stated, that we know that we have risks, particularly in Victoria and South Australia, but also in other parts of the country that the government is seeking to manage after we saw so much private sector investment refuse to invest as a consequence of the uncertainty that those opposite presided over. So we do need to get more renewables in the grid. That will take pressure off bills, and it will also help protect Australians from volatile international prices. We are making billions of dollars of investment in ensuring Australia is a renewable energy superpower, and we are seeking and we are implementing overdue policy reform to deliver a cheaper, cleaner, more reliable energy system. And, for example, I'm advised that we are anticipating we will have 3.4 gigawatts more generation this summer than in the last summer. In relation to Marinus Link, which was the first part of your question, this is an incredibly important project for Tasmania and Australia. It will reduce cost of living pressures for Tasmanians.
I'll beg your pardon, Minister Wong. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. I was just wondering, I think the question was whether or not they intend to release the expert analysis and evidence upon which the decision was based. Is a pretty simple question. It's either yes or no.
Well, there was also the preamble, Senator Lambie, but I'm happy to draw the Minister to the second part of your question, but the Minister is entitled to answer the whole question.
I apologise, Senator Lambie. I thought you were talking about the general proposition, but if it's in relation to the Marinus Link economic analysis, I will take advice upon that. It is the case that the Stage 1 project is projected to deliver economic stimulus
Thank you, Minister. The time
to
for
Tasmania.
answering has expired. Senator Lambie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. According to reports, the Tasmanian Government has said the original proposal for 2 cables has been scrapped in favour of just 1 cable. This was done to reduce the cost of the project. Experts tell me 1 cable cuts the capacity of the link, undermining its potential for enhanced energy security. Can the Minister explain how cutting this project in half will bring the same level of enhanced energy security and redundancy?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Wong.
Well, obviously, the government has to look at the cost of the project very carefully and ensure that we deliver the best outcome for taxpayers that we can. The reality is this is a project competing in a global market. We have very constrained supply chains and we have inflationary pressures around the world, and those are affecting all major energy and infrastructure projects globally. So it is the case that we have announced that the project will focus on the first cable, on delivering the first cable, with discussions to continue on the second cable to be considered after Cable 1 investment has been determined. As I said, even only one cable will deliver. I am advised by that AEMO has said that Cable 1 will deliver close to 2/3 of the total benefit of the whole project.
Thank
you,
Minister.
with this
the
cost
time for
increase,
answering has expired. Senator Lambie, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Recent news reports suggest that Victoria, with their new wind farms and battery storage investments, are going cold on this project. Has the minister received a solid commitment from the Victorian government that they will share the cost of building the Marinus Link with Tasmania and the federal government?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I'll get advice about what I can provide you in relation to funding arrangements. What I can say is this is a project that the Australian government is committed to delivering. It's a project that will deliver, as I said, economic benefit to Tasmania as well as to Victoria, and as importantly, it will improve reliability. It will improve reliability in the national electricity market. We would see better utilisation of existing Tasmanian generation, and we would see additional security for Tasmania, providing important redundancy for the Basslink connection. But in relation to the funding arrangements, I have some knowledge. I need to check with the Minister what can be provided in the public context, and I'll do so.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Grogan.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Last month, the Albanese government made an historic agreement with states and territories to deliver the Murray-Darling Basin Plan in full, including 450 gigalitres of water for the environment. Can the Minister please explain to the Senate how this plan will put the Murray-Darling, a vital river system, on a healthy and sustainable path for our kids and grandkids after 9 long years of neglect?
Thank you. Before I call the Minister, I'm going to ask for silence. There were interjections before whilst Senator Grogan had been on her feet for about 10 seconds. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Grogan, for the question. And as a South Australian, Senator Grogan knows that the River Murray is truly South Australia's lifeblood, and she has also campaigned on this issue for years, and I thank her for it. And Senator Grogan knows that a healthy Murray-Darling Basin is critical for the future security and prosperity of our country. It's often called the nation's food bowl. It supports farms, vineyards and livestock, and of course, critically, the drinking water that comes from the Murray flows to hundreds of thousands of homes. Our government, the Albanese Labor government, is working to I'm unsurprised that there's an interjection from the National Party, those who have tried to scupper the plan for a decade, and that's why you interject now. And you see, Albanese Labor government is working to protect...
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator, please continue, Minister. Senator Watt.
I believe Senator Mackenzie just accused Senator Wong of lying. She might like to withdraw that.
Thank you. I didn't hear the comment because... Order! Senators on my right. Senators on my right. I'm addressing a point of order. I didn't hear the interjection, but I am going to invite Senator Mackenzie to withdraw without reference to the comment, if she made the comment. Thank you, Senator Mackenzie.
I withdraw if it assists the chamber.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong, please continue.
Those opposite had nearly a decade to deliver, and what did they achieve? 2 gigs out of 450.
Senator
2 gigalitres out of 450. Mr. President, do you know if you left it to the coalition, to the Liberals and the Nationals, it would take you 2,000 years years to deliver the plan. Those opposite...
Senator McKenzie. Minister, please continue.
Sabotage every good faith attempt to deliver the plan. And the truth is the National Party never wanted the plan, and the truth is the Liberals were too spineless to stand up to them. And the only party who's prepared to do the work to get the Murray-Darling Basin plan back on track is the Labor Party. It's the only party who's prepared to deliver. And we've struck a new deal with New South Wales, South Australia, Queensland and the ACT to deliver the plan in full. We've introduced legislation to help do this, a plan that delivers more water for the environment, more certainty for farmers and industry, more protection for native plants and animals, and a better future for Australia's most important river system.
Thank you, Minister Australia's most important river system. The time for answering has expired. Senator Grogan, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. And thank you to Minister Wong for her dedication on the Murray-Darling for so many years in the face of such opposition. Recently, the Murray-Darling...
Senator Grogan, please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie, I've called you about 5 times in a row. Senator McKenzie, I am calling for order. You are being disrespectful and disorderly. Senator Grogan, please continue your question.
Recently, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority released a report that revealed just how much basin communities were let down by the previous government. Can the minister please inform the Senate how this place now has the power to support a better future for Australians and the environment?
Minister. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. If those in this chamber need a reminder of why this plan is necessary, let's go back to one of the leaders during the Millennium Drought who said, "The old way of managing the basin has reached its use-by date. We need to confront head-on and in a comprehensive way the over-allocation of water in the Murray-Darling." Well, that was John Howard. That was John Howard. So there are some on that side who do understand that the National Party position on this, which is now determining Mr Dutton's position, is an irrational position. I saw that the member for Sturt told The Australian today that the 450 gigs of environmental water should be delivered including through voluntary water purchase. And Senator McLaughlin, who also said it was imperative that we prioritise the welfare of our natural world by securing this water. These are good comments. I am surprised that the silence from senior South Australian Liberals, Senator Birmingham and Senator Ruston, on the importance of the 450 gigs to their state
has expired, and I remind you to refer to others, former Prime Ministers, by their correct title. Senator Grogan, second. Order. Senator Wong and Senator Canavan. Order. Senator Grogan, second supplementary.
Thank you for that response. Given how critically important the delivery of the 450 gigalitres of water is, can the minister please explain to the Senate if there are any people trying to stand in the way of this plan being implemented? We may have had a few hints with the interjections.
Minister Wong.
Well, President, the fact is we know that there is one party that has been consistent in their opposition to improving the health of the Murray-Darling Basin for over a decade, and that is the National Party. That is the National Party. I mean, the Nationals have never shown anything but contempt for the plan. And those of us, Senator Canavan, we remember in South Australia Barnaby Joyce telling us, Mr Joyce telling us to move where the water is. That's what he told us, people from Adelaide, from South Australia. Move where the water is. He said there wasn't a hope in Hades that we would get the water that was promised. That's what he said. But the problem for South Australians is not just that Mr Joyce and the National Party run water policy for Mr Dutton. It's that the South Australian Liberal Party are so spineless in response. And instead of standing up for their constituents, instead of standing up for South Australia,
thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Chandler.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. I refer the minister to comments made last week by the Minister for Transport, Catherine King, when she said the actions of Qatari security forces to detain women at Hamad International Airport and undertake invasive body searches was a factor in the government's rejection of Qatar Airways. The government has been in office for more than 15 months. Minister, what actions and on what dates prior to Minister King making the Qatar Airways decision on the 10th of July 2023 did you raise with representatives of the Qatar government the Australian government's concerns in respect to the incident at Hamad International Airport and treatment of Australian women?
Thank you, Senator Chandler. Minister Wong.
Thank you. I first would say that the mistreatment of female passengers was a terrible incident, and I think we all would agree that, and I think all Australians were shocked by the events. I will also say, as I have said publicly, that we appreciate the State of Qatar's efforts following the incident to investigate, apologise and ensure it's never repeated, including establishing the task force to review airport procedures and protocols. And I acknowledge the work that Senator Payne engaged in relation to that. I would say to you that I was briefed on this matter following the election. I tasked officials, including our ambassador to Doha, to continue to engage with Qatari authorities in support of requests made by the women. That has been done on a number of occasions, numerous occasions, and I can confirm I have also raised these matters with my Qatari counterpart. We hope that there will be a full implementation of the task force recommendations. We continue to engage with this issue in support of the women concerned in a manner that is appropriate, and we will make appropriate representations to the Qatari authorities.
Senator Chandler, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. I refer to comments by the Prime Minister in question time on the 4th of September. Qatar Airways can add more seats into Australia today, right now. They are certainly welcome to do so, and they can fly as many flights as they like into Adelaide, into the Gold Coast, into Avalon, into Hobart and into Canberra. Minister, if the government considers the actions of Qatari authorities in 2020 are a valid factor for denying additional flights to major airports, why have the Prime Minister and Transport Minister called for Qatar to provide more flights to regional airports? Is flying through Doha safe or isn't it?
Minister Wong.
At the risk of being a little pedantic, that you asked me the primary as Foreign Minister, and now you are asking me a question in relation to the Prime Minister and Transport Minister's portfolios.
Senator McKenzie.
I would hope that on the issue of the treatment of Australian women and the work by both sides of politics in government to try and resolve or find a way forward in relation to this matter, that would be a matter above partisan politics. The Prime Minister's statement, I think, speaks for itself.
Senator Chandler, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, don't the inconsistencies in Labor's policies and explanations demonstrate that the Transport Minister and the government are cynically using the incident at Hamad International Airport to distract the public from Labor's protection of Qantas from competition, and as a consequence are imposing higher airfares on Australians?
Minister Wong.
No, and that's a very disappointing approach for you to take in relation to this incident, and no, it is a disappointing approach. I am disappointed. It's not a personal attack, it's a disappointment. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Thank you.